Brothers and sisters, so now time to get into the different rules of discernment that St. Ignatius proposes to us to navigate our inspirations and to discern, as he would say. And the first rule is really kind of simple and straightforward, because it only really applies to a specific state of soul that the rest of the 13 rules do not apply. Or really speaking about a soul who's struggling in mortal sin, and going from mortal sin to mortal sin. A soul who is yet to really start fighting that pattern of sin, to break free, to experience the liberation of Christ, and to start experiencing a liberation of soul. And a mortal sin is just a sin that turns us away from God, turns our soul away from his life, and to the point that really keeps it exterior to the very inner life of God, keeps it, or if one was in a state of grace, when committed, it breaks us severs us from that intimate participation in the light of God, which we can most certainly do. Maybe today it's not fashionable to talk about mortal sin, because it's sort of a deceived view that, we'll all go to heaven and it'll all be fine. And therefore we've lost this sense of this spiritual battle, this spiritual combat that we're in for our souls, and that the Lord has allowed us to be in, so that we could, grow in virtue and character and seek him. And so in this rule, basically, it's very interesting to see what happens between the good spirits, we could say, and the bad spirits around this discernment of mortal sin. And basically the bad spirits, will entice us to kind of apparent pleasures, pleasures that seem to be good, that are enticing, and that they really go to appeal to our sensual delights and pleasure, in order to enslave us more, and basically lead us down a road of greater vice, and away from God, and away from virtue, away from good character, away from the gospel living. However, in this state, good spirits will prick our conscience. The Holy Spirit could try to convict us of our sin, and therefore, try to appeal to our process of reason and moral judgment. And so Dan gives a kind of a typical example, which unfortunately has become so wide pressed, because so many people are no longer aware of why the Lord has asked us to, keep our, gift of our sexuality from marriage between a man and a woman, and the sacredness of the sacrament of marriage. And so, it's one of those things that it's a good example Dan gives of how to try and maybe understand these discernment of spirits, where you can have a man or woman seeking, sexual intimacy before marriage, and so the spirits appeal to say, this is good, this is love, it feels good, it feels peaceful, it feels like the right thing to do. And in this case, it's a great example of how we shouldn't trust a kind of a pseudo peace or false peace, because sometimes the advice we hear is, do what your heart feels right, do what feels right to you, what's right, but often our consciences are not educated, and this is where the good spirit, the Lord, will try to prick us to, we might be in this situation and might feel a bit of unease at it, because we know that we're somehow deep down, maybe we're going against the spiritual laws that the Lord has set out for us, or the moral laws, or the spiritual order that is there, that the Lord wants us to live in, so that we could flourish. And it's not to make us, tie us down or suppress us. Rather, it's because if he expects these things from us, it's because there's wisdom behind it. There's freedom that he wants to give by us being faithful to this order, this divine order. And so the kind of the good spirit, will rob us of peace in these moments, will prick our conscience, while the evil spirit will suggest to us, no, keep going, it's okay, and to try and remind the person of their love for each other and how it should be expressed in this way, etc. Well, we know that the Lord will try and want us to safeguard that precious, sacred act of sexual intimacy from marriage, where it's guarded and protected by the sacrament. And what is fascinating about this situation, Dan points out, which is what I've already mentioned, is that, there can be a false peace, a lack of an authentic peace that comes about in this situation that we may seek to be followed. But in such situations, we should appeal to the gospel and the way of Christ, because quite quickly we get stupid, we get spiritually dumb, and we need the light of the gospel to remind us that no, if I go down that path, in fact, I'm drinking darkness upon my soul. I'm moving away from the light. I'm heading down a very different direction away from the Lord. And so it's really important to fight such temptations.